Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome back to our next episode of Reason with Steph. This evening, I am going to be talking to you about when God says yes. The devil tries to stop you, but when the devil say no, who say yes? God says yes. Just remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. When we come back, you'll hear some more. This evening, I start by saying to you, as Psalm 55 and verse 22 says, cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. This evening, I am going to be sharing one more testimony with you. Yes, there are so many testimony about the goodness of God. And this evening, God's goodness is my first security officer job. And I tell you some of my troubles, some of my trials before. And I'm going to remind you that I was selling before I even become a teacher, a security, or anything. I used to make things, bake, whatsoever I could, and I would go there and I would sell them. But as I remind you that there was a time when things get very hard. Yes, the struggles, as I tell you before, is something that is real. I don't make stories. I give you the stories just as it is. And I tell you, times get very hard and I couldn't afford to pay my bills. And I decided to go look a job. And at the time, I heard about a company that was opening its door. And let me tell you, every Sunday I would send to buy the Gleaner. And I tell you, at that time I didn't have CXCs. I didn't have any subjects. So you know that it would be hard to get a job. But you see, when you talk to God, He tells you that He'll sustain you. He tells you that He will provide for you. He tells you that when you pray, He answers your prayer. Yes, when you talk to Him, and in everything that you do, always talk to Him about it. Not just get up and jump and go and do it without consulting God. Remember, I tell you, in everything I do, I consult God. Yes. And I would buy the Gleaner, and every Sunday I would search it for work. And I remember that Sunday evening, while searching, I saw where there was an opening where they were employing security officers. And even though I saw that, because I was told by the company that was opening that I should take in an application that day, I moved to that company with the application. I did not leave the house going anywhere else that morning but to that company, because I was so sure that that company was where God was sending me after I prayed. But I tell you something. That morning when I went to the company, Remember, I tell you now that I have to consult God first, and I don't move until God tells me to. You must always listen to Him. So that morning, I went to the company, the person that told me to come in. And when I went there, he was so busy, he didn't have time for me. Not even to take the letter of application from me. And I got so discouraged. But at that same time, I was saying, "No, you tell me if you come and come now, and you don't have no time for me." And I was discouraged. But I began to think. And I remember seeing the application in the paper. And you know what? The place that put out the advertisement was on the same route that I went to with the application for the next job. So I decided to stop by. So I walked to the company that morning. And when I walked and I knocked, somebody came out to me. And when the lady came out to me, I told her that I saw an application in the paper that they were seeking security officers. The first thing the lady said, "A pay woman a flock this a place from a man, a man we want." But at the same time, quick thinking, God is like somebody talking to me. Tell her that they didn't specify in the paper that it was male or female. They said they needed security officer. So I just said to her, "Miss, the paper didn't specify the male or female. They said that they needed security officers." Here, all right, come in. Not even presentable, making you feel welcome. If it was some of you, you might turn back. But when she said that, I was so happy because remember I tell you I was struggling. And if you have raw meat, you have to seek some fire to cook it, don't it? Yes. So I went in. She gave me a newspaper and she said, "Read this." And I read the paper, and she sent me into a room to do the test. When I looked into that room that morning, there were so many persons in that room for interview that day. And I tell you, man, I began to think and I started to talk to the Almighty. And every time that you talk to God, remember to keep listening. Listen to Him, listen to the voice, hear what He's saying to you, and continue to talk to Him. And let me tell you this too. Don't just talk to Him when you're in troubles and you want help, and when you get the help and you feel like, say, all right, everything all right, remember God. It's an everyday thing. I remember having a pastor that tell us to pray and put up. So guess what? Pray and put up, because there will be times, I'm not going to tell you a lie, there will be times when you feel like you can't pray. But as soon as you can, you feel the urge to pray, pray. I encourage you to seek God. This moment, I'm telling you that I went into the room, and I tell you, there were a lot of persons there that morning. And I did the test, and I gave in my paper, and I passed the test. Time for interview, I realized that they were calling persons now for interview, and persons were going and leaving. and not coming back in the room. And then I see like persons go for the interview and they come back and they say they tell them to wait. Remember, they said they didn't want any ladies. A meal them want. When the lady approached me in the morning, she said a meal we want. And I told her that the paper didn't specify. And I saw a couple males came back around in the room and they sit and say they told them to wait. And I went into my interview when it was my time. And when the persons, there were about 4 persons on the panel that day, and they questioned me. They asked me questions that pertaining more like cashier when you were because I used to work as a cashier before I was selling. So they asked me question like, what could happen when you work as a cashier, what the cashier can do to steal the money. And I did answer them because there were a lot of gap that I found in cashiering where they can really steal the money if they are not watched carefully. And when I finished the interview, the gentlemen, they shake their head and say, you are what we wanted. And they send me back to the room to sit. Remember, I tell you, the lady, the way she approached me, if I wasn't speaking to God, I would what? Run and say, all right, miss. And I would go and I would leave the job. But God was preparing me for there and not the one that I bring the application for that morning. And as I tell you before, continue to listen to the voice of the Lord that talks to you. By listening to the voice of God, I was told to go back to the room. And I went back to the room, I sit down, and the persons that interviewed us came in. One person from the group came in and he told us that we were successful in getting the job. Now, if I had not listened and I got disappointed very early, I would have gone. But God was in the midst. So we went in and we do our interview. We got the job. We were told that we got the job. Now training coming. I started training the next day. So the next day I had to go to training that morning. And normally we would be trained for 3 weeks or 2 weeks. But you know me, how long we trained for? 3 days. That's how much they had wanted persons for the job. So you could call it that I did some on-the-job training. I was sent to a location in 3 days' time to work. Who could it be but God? God is in the midst, and I was able to smile at the storm. God is a good God. He's an awesome God. For I know the thought that I think towards you, said the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. The thought that God had for me that morning wasn't for me to get the job where I was taking the application, but to get the job as a security officer that morning. I believe that after everything that occurred that morning, that wasn't my expected end. My expected end was at the security company that morning. And listen me, sometime the Almighty God is talking to a lot of us. And because we feel like that is where we want the job, and me feel it this so, and this so me I go. Because I this so me feel. And him said that I know your own. But yet still you force yourself and you push, and when you go there, you get uncomfortable. It was not your expected end. The thought that God had for you, it was for good. It wasn't for evil. So if you're going to be somewhere and being uncomfortable, it was not your expected end. Listen me. Continue to pray. Continue to look to God. Continue to trust Him. Take Him at His word, and you will be edified. Have yourselves a wonderful evening. God bless you, and be good until we meet again.